Hello, I'm Chuck Phillip, and welcome to another edition of Southern Stories. I'm standing in front of the old Southern building in downtown Mobile. This is close to the Alabama State Docks and Alabama Terminal Railway. I used to work for CSX back in the 90s and into the 2000s, and I never really thought a whole lot about the railroad. Even when I worked there, I really never thought much of it. It was just a job. It was a job I enjoyed doing. But I think back when I talked to the old head conductors and engineers that were there, and they were telling me, what it was like back in the early days. A lot of those guys had been there since the 40s when they still had steam engines, and they also had five-man crews back then too. And so I got to thinking about, the deep history of the railroad, and really, that's what built America. Had it not been for the railroads. Now, prior to the railroads coming into our country, I think they came in around 1827, here in the United States, and I think it came to our area not too long after that. But before that, there was basically transportation via ships and boats. That's how everything got moved around. And so that's why we had the Alabama State Docks, and I remember seeing it on the news almost every night. Back in the 60s and 70s, because, that was one of the biggest things we had here, outside of Scott Paper Company and International, which are pretty much a skeleton of what it used to be. I was raised by my grandparents, and I called him my dad, Charlie Phillip. He worked at Scott Paper Company as a machinist. And I remember him telling me, he says, "Chuck, you've had more jobs than Carter's got liver pills." And I always thought that was a kind of cute saying. But he's right, I've had quite a few of them. But he was born in 1910, and he passed away, prior to me taking this job at the railroad. And I often wondered, had he been still alive, what kind of stories he could have told me about it as well. And so passenger service was still a thing all the way through the 60s and some 70s. And I believe the Southern sold out to Amtrak around the turn of the 80s. And so anyway, this is the old Southern building, and I think most of it, if not all, has been built out of Clay City brick. That's a product that came out of Fairhope. And so, I went around this thing and I was checking it out, and this was abandoned when I worked at the railroad back in the 90s. And so I'm not quite sure how long it's been abandoned, but it is in pretty bad shape. That it is. I mean, the roof is caved in several areas. But, curiosity got the best of me, and I just really wanted to see what this thing was like on the inside. And so, let's take a trip in there, guys. Let's see what it looks like. Alright, fixing to open this door here. It's got peeling paint everywhere. It was really dark inside as well. I had a really bright flashlight I took with me. I also sprayed down from head to toe with off. I think I still got some of that on me. I sprayed so much of it on me going in here because I was afraid I might get fleas and who knows what else. So I have my camera with me, and you can see all the splotches on the drywall there. I'll show a better picture of that in a little bit, but it's actually termites that got in the drywall. I found that in some of my home inspections too. They'll actually get between the paper and the rock and go to eating away. So apparently they made it in this building here, and they did their job on the paneling and also the drywall in here and a lot of the framing in the wood. So I came in here not knowing what to expect, and it's a lot of stuff, just a lot of debris laying around in here too. I guess, over the years people have gone through here and taken stuff out of here, but got a lot of, they have a suspended ceiling in here as well, and so a lot of that came down too. Alright, stepping back out in the hallway, heading eastbound in this hall. And I still envision this thing being bustling with people running all over the place. Probably dozens, if not more than 50 clerks that probably worked here in all kinds of capacities. Like you see, there's some large, smaller rooms. And so this thing was specifically designed to perform the function that it did, because like I say, it was the center. Most all railroads were the center of everything you wanted to do, probably even banking as well. There was a restroom right there we passed. And so we're coming up here at the main entrance. So I consider this the front. And so this is like the foyer way into this. And I guess you probably noticed that sign. It was above that. And all railroads were real proud of the safety record, if they had a good safety record, because it was a real hazardous place to work, even more dangerous so back then. Okay, I'm standing in the main hallway now, and I noticed right away that this whole thing's partitioned off into both large and small and even smaller rooms. And so who knows what kind of office this might have been. The ceiling's coming down in here, as you can see. And it's got paneling as well. Of course, I know that was probably added sometime in the 50s, maybe the 60s. They just did some remodeling. And here's another more narrow room here. This may have even been where they did the telegraph service, because, like I say, the railroads were everything to everyone back then. You can see where the fixtures have actually fallen out of this. Really want to take my time going in here to make sure there's nothing else going to fall out of the ceiling. These doorways were really tall, and there again I can see, all the desks in here, and men and women working here every day and taking pride in their work and being thankful they had a good paying job as well. You can see how far this one goes back. This is the back right side of the building there. Okay, I'm about to enter this room. This is the far right side or east side of the building, and the ceiling's about to come down in here, so I kind of hesitated before I went in here. Probably shouldn't have, but I hugged this wall here to the right and stayed up against it because I wanted to see what that door was. And as it turns out, this was the safe. Yeah, it's a walk-in safe. It had a double door entry into it, and so of course there's nothing in it anymore. But this just goes to show you that the railroad, was probably pretty much a bank in a lot of respects, because they dealt with selling tickets, the freight. Also, they would cash probably their employees' checks. Western Union mostly originated out of the railroads themselves, and so they would have every reason to have a safe in this thing. I got to thinking, watching back at the old westerns, how they'd ride their horses along the train and jump on it and rob the train and throw the bags of money out. Well, according to my research, the first reported train robbery was in 1866 by the brothers John and Simon Reno, and they supposedly got off around $13,000, which had been a fortune back then. And according to what I understand as well, the last one was done in November of 1937. That was a Southern Pacific train, and it was headed to El Paso, Texas. And that was also committed by two young men named Henry Lofus, and he was 22, and Harry Donaldson, age 27. And from what I understand, they shot one of the trainmen, and one of the passengers, or maybe several of them, beat him up pretty good, as you can see from this photograph. But I think pretty much what's happened ever since 37, there haven't really been any train robberies, but there have been a lot of train burglaries, and that's why, they have railroad police to kind of guard some of this important cargo that comes through, and that's probably about the extent of what goes on now with them. All right, heading back on the west side, down the hallway here, that's the HVAC return. Of course, it's missing the filter. I only saw one return for the entire building, but it could have had more in there. And so this is the room where the furnace and the HVAC air handler sat. And I think this is one of the original ones. I couldn't find any information all on this unit, so it probably dates back to the 30s or 1920s. But I thought it was kind of cool, so I took some photographs of the label there. I wonder how well a job it did as far as cooling and heating this place. I noticed with this missing suspended ceiling that it had some of the original light fixtures in here from probably back when it got built. And they're pretty ornate looking as well, but also saw some just regular bulbs in some areas. Okay, well, this is the last room I went into. This is one of the bathrooms in the building, and it's got the original tile, and I was taking photographs of these windows. I was sort of impressed with the height of them. And they also had chicken wire inside them as well. That's what they used for early glass protection, to keep them from breaking or breaking all over the place. And of course the mirror didn't break either when I looked at it. And so I was able to find my way out of here. All right, I'm admiring all these vines growing up the side of this thing and trees growing up out of the slab as well. I mean, I wonder how long it took for that to happen. So this must have been the loading platform. More than likely, some of the rail cars may have abutted this. And I got to look at this American flag hanging there, and I was kind of impressed with that. And there were some vagrants here. I talked to one of them, and I was, kind of mesmerized by this flag hanging behind here. And I got to thinking about the railroad, the Southern, and the L&N, which is a family lines where I've worked, became CSX. But back then, L&N being the family lines, well, the employees cared about the company, and the company cared about the employees, and it was just a different era back then. And it just seems like over decades that's just slipped away a little at a time, to where, we just seem to be a divided nation under two parties, and we just can't seem to come together as one for the better of our countries. And we need to do this for our children if we're going to survive as a country. All right, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to watch this video. I also want to thank everybody that subscribed to this channel as well, because basically we've got a big enough group going now to where we can kind of round out some of these stories, because I don't know everything, and I've learned a lot from you as well. And if you haven't subscribed to this, I'd like for you to become part of the Southern Stories family too, so you can help expand that information. And I've got some good ones I'm working on. I hope to have posted pretty soon. And so if you'd like to be notified when they're released, just click that notification bell. And I'll see you on the next one, guys. Peace out.